Welcome to yet another episode of the brand called You, a video and podcast show that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Today, it is my privilege to have a very accomplished social entrepreneur with me, Mr. Mitra Arya. Ved, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh.
Ved is from IIT Kanpur, then he went to IIM Ahmedabad, two of the premier institutions in our country. He's the founder of SRIJAN, which has at its mandate to improve incomes of 95,000 rural families in 6 states. He's the founder of the Buddha Fellowship Program, which grooms 1,000 development entrepreneurs, and he's a member of various policy-making bodies of the Government of India. Wade, what would you say are 3 key milestones in your career?
One is basis of building SRIJAN, which is, we can say, as a milestone, which ultimately actually has benefited 100,000 families now, and 500,000 people's lives we have touched. Started with the fact that I worked in TCS.
Okay.
And I saw the families of fishermen and found that squalor, and I found it unbearable. So I quit TCS.
Okay.
So the first, and then started the journey of what do I want in my life? And I found this opportunity to work in tribal areas.
Okay.
And so the first milestone is that the reflection on what I was doing. I was doing well, but I switched. I never looked back. In a way, I got stuck, and I never got out of that rut. Where I could say that.
Okay.
But some other people will call it perseverance.
Correct.
Another name for being stuck with one thing.
Okay.
So, setting up SRIJAN and finding colleagues and reaching the milestone in that sense that 100,000 families we have been able to touch, impact their lives. And I remember myself that the target actually I had set up for myself when I was leaving TCS only 100 for my lifetime. So I have got more out of my life than I could hope for, and I'm very thankful to Almighty God for that.
Wonderful.
Second one is that of actually during the UPA 2 time, I worked very closely with the Planning Commission and I wrote the draft of the Rural Development Chapter.
Wow. Okay.
Of the 12 5-year plan based on my human resources work. And I, in fact, wrote a book on HR, and that became quite famous. And this is the book that I wrote. So, yeah.
Wonderful.
And the third is Buddha Fellowship Program is still new, and it has to reach the milestone 1,000 development entrepreneurs. And I have set up an organizations of 65 civil society organizations. We call it RCRC, enabling rapid rural community response to COVID-19. And these 65 organizations have collective gross revenue in a year of 1,300 crores and impacts about 1.6 crore people in the country in 110 districts. In a very short listing, yeah.
Quite interesting milestone. So before I move to talking to you a little about SRIJAN and the Buddha Fellowship, I was very intrigued when I was reading about you. You know, you and I are of similar vintage. IIT Kanpur, I'm sure a lot of your classmates must have flown off to the US. Then you went into IIM Ahmedabad. I'm sure most of your classmates must have gone into top corporate jobs. What made you select the social sector as a career?
Somehow I don't set economic goals for myself.
Okay.
Probably it is not in my DNA, the way I was brought up in a strong Arisamaji household. And my maternal grandfather took sannyas at the ripe old age of 37.
Wow.
So my mother actually went to Gurukul at the age of 8 years.
Amazing.
So we brought up in, maybe that is what kicked in. I was working in TCS. I actually turned down the offer of TBL at the time of graduating from IIM Ahmedabad. You have campus interviews.
Correct.
First 2 days I got two offers,
Mhm.
Tata Consulting Services and Tata Burrows, and I somehow thought I should set up something in the country.
Okay.
Previously, after graduating or during the final year, I got 10 US university offers, including the MIT, and 66% or two-thirds of my batch has gone to the US, as you said.
Yes, I can imagine.
And I think I should thank the visa officer in the US Embassy who told me you will not come back.
Okay.
So I am not going to give you visa.
Uh-huh.
And I came back and told my mother that, this guy didn't give me visa. He said, "Achha hi kiya. You would not have come back." So that's how it sort of settled for me. I didn't apply again for the visa.
Interesting.
So I think somewhere I don't want to call myself with any high sounding names like nationalist, etc. But I think when I was working in TCS, I never wanted to do coding for a long time. And somehow, even though I did well, my boss, Bala, he still remembers me. Recently, I had dinner with him in his house. He became one of the highest revenue earning professionals for Infosys after leaving TCS. But somehow I sort of didn't fit. The mold of the corporate didn't fit me, or I was a misfit, so to say. And I met Baba Ante after quitting TCS.
Wonderful. So let's talk about SRIJAN. You've been working on improving the lives of 100,000 people. Share with me some of your challenges in this journey.
So as they say, in IIT you do physics 101. I didn't do well because I was a Hindi speaking boy. And I didn't understand a word.
Okay.
So here I'll tell you the story how I failed in politics 101.
Okay.
I shifted to a tribal area of South Rajasthan, and today we talk about migrants. So I noticed that in tribal areas, among tribals, you have one crop. In monsoon rains and soil gets wet and you grow maize, or if you have more water, you will grow paddy. But you don't have irrigation to artificially soak the soil for second crop, winter crop. So tribals, particularly men, will travel outside and then migrate, etc., to get money.
Right.
So we realized that in the villages I was working in South Rajasthan, there's plenty of water. In fact, there were backwaters of a dam called Mahi Kadana, and I thought, let me quickly apply my mind, and 5 horsepower diesel pump was what you need. You lift water and all will be well after that. So money was available on the tap, in the sense the donor from Netherlands was giving money. So we thought, let's have one scheme for the entire village. Hundreds of acres. We'll have a distributed pipe line, etc., to give water to every farm. So we built that. Deep Joshi, who is the founder of Pradhan, my MIT graduate, together we used to cook these ideas up and all that. So we made that design, and then winter was coming, the crop sowing time was coming. So we said, okay, let's go and buy fertilizer. So we bought hundreds of sacks of urea and stocked in somebody's spare room. And this village was called Govindpura, and I used to go. It's on a hill, so I used to go take with my motorcycle. I used to drive a bullet. And one day I reach with my bullet and see that there is nothing left.
Wow.
Not a bag of urea. Entire thing has been stolen.
My God.
And here I am, good Samaritan, do gooder. I think I'm doing everything for these guys. I was frustrated.
Amazing.
So I realized. Then I began to scratch my head and looked around, not a trace of this damn thing. And then I realized, when you ask around, you figure out that the scheme was actually conceived in consultation with somebody called Ravji Bhai, who used to take us across the river on his boat and used to never charge even 1 rupee he would normally charge other people. So I used to eat makke ki roti and whatever tur dal in his house and thought about this scheme. And he is a very progressive farmer. He had been to Gujarat, etc. So we thought this is it. So the Kanji Bhai, who was the village Adhyaksh, village Sarpanch, he didn't like it because if the scheme got implemented, everybody in the village knew, the credit will go to Ravji Bhai. So he would lose the election the next time.
I see.
So he organized a sabotage, and whatever you say, you make your plans and well laid plans.
Rest was history.
The rest was history. Then what we did was, then we just implemented a small pilot just for 10 farmers, including in Ravji's plot. We gave water, he grew wheat, and now Kanji Bhai is thinking, what would happen to my plot. So he came around later and etc. etc. And then we replicated in 20-30 villages. So that was my first challenge. This novice of a technology and management graduate, I was trying to apply linear programming, all these things. Nothing came to it. It all comes to a knot. In where you deal with politics 101, I failed.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people have gone through the same realization because it's a completely different training ground from what a management institute can give you. So let's move to Buddha Fellowship. You say that you are grooming 1,000 development entrepreneurs. Help me understand, what is a development entrepreneur?
So entrepreneur, everybody understands.
Correct.
So a development entrepreneur, people will say, is an oxymoron.
I was going to say the same thing.
That either you can do development, which means you take grant from, say, Tata's or Axis Bank and go and set up this lift irrigation scheme.
Correct.
And don't take a pie from the people who benefit from. What we think is required for sustainability, because you can go on asking for more and more grants because so many poor people, this would not be sustainable.
Right.
So, an idea which helps the poor, but also doesn't require repeated doses of capital. How do you set up a sustainable value chain? So, and that is what, let me give you the example, the most famous example, Amul. That, you set up a value chain, you buy milk and you sell it in Delhi or anywhere, you build a brand. That was self-sustainable. So that is what development entrepreneurship is about. A person sets up an enterprise which benefits poor people. Their incomes are increased, but the enterprise is such that you can replow the profits back into the enterprise, and that Gadi, the train, actually continues.
And then, therefore, my logical next question to you would be that, do you set guidelines of how much profit a development entrepreneur should make so that he doesn't shift from development to entrepreneurship extremely?
That is the most difficult part.
Okay.
In fact, when we try to set up proposals, we will say so many entrepreneurs we will set up, but they will ask this question, unless he makes profits, he is not an entrepreneur. So we will often tend to go towards entrepreneurship, business entrepreneurship, giving short shift to development. It can happen, especially if you go to a venture capitalist, he will look for not only higher return, in the American sense of the term, you will exit with a much higher value. So that puts a lot of pressure on a promoter like me. But our definition is simpler, that what percentage of the customer rupee or a customer dollar is going back to the producer. What it means is, you must make profit, but beyond that, it's not that you can fatten yourself with salaries of marketing professionals or brand professionals, etc. So one gold standard is Amul. Even when we ran the scheme of dairy in Tong district, and the turnover used to be 5 crore,
Right.
85 paise of every rupee that we sold the milk for
Hmm.
used to go back to the person who would give milk. That means the women who were pouring milk in our village cooperatives,
Correct.
they got 85 paise out of a rupee that we got.
Wonderful.
So, in my definition, that kind of a criteria, even though you may start with say 40 paise you are able to give, but progressively you are able to make your value chain efficient.
Very true. Very true.
Then,
Very true. So, the next question that I have for you is that what is the logic for the name Buddha Fellowship? What does Buddha have to do with development entrepreneurship?
to be resilient
Okay.
and especially in the idea when you have an entrepreneurship, you have a development entrepreneurship, there are so many challenges
Correct.
that you are more likely to fail than succeed. So
Okay.
that is one very important aspect of the entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
that Buddha teaches you to be sort of at peace with yourself or be calm in the face of difficulty. So that is one thing I think that is important. Capacity to deal with failure,
Okay.
and even if you get success, not to sort of revel in it,
Mhm.
because next day you will see failure.
Okay.
So even in my, and secondly, I was more enamored of a philosophy that is not going to worry about parlok.
Okay.
All the your punya is going to give you return in this life itself. And what you see in computer, what you see is what you get. We used to say in TCS.
Correct.
Is the Buddha philosophy actually.
Fair enough.
So I thought this is very practical philosophy
Hmm.
rather than worry about the parlok,
Okay.
etc. or punarjan.
Fair
And
enough.
I think it answers more questions than the Hindu philosophy does.
Hmm. So my next question to you is that, I can understand after you've spoken to me about the motivation of Ved Mitra to have given your background and all your mothers and your grandfather and everyone else who came from such an environment. What will motivate a young person today to give up the so-called lucrative corporate jobs and become a development entrepreneur?
I think young generation of India is far more risk taking than you and I were
I
in
agree.
the early 80s or late 70s.
Yes.
We still looked for a job to stay with rest of your life. Our parents actually never, they retired from the government, most of them.
Correct.
But in our case also, we wanted to join a Pounds or a ITC or a Dabur or whatever
Yeah.
and retire from there. That
Yeah.
is what we wanted to do.
Hmm.
But I think this generation is far more risk taking. They have far many more options also.
Okay.
So I am picking on their risk taking ability.
Okay.
Number one.
Hmm.
There may be a few, but they are far more in terms of number. Secondly, they may be driven by a challenge that a rural entrepreneurship throws at them. And frankly, the market is crowded, urban entrepreneurship area is much crowded. But you look at supply chains, 10 to 12% of the vegetable goes is waste, fruit goes waste. So there are opportunities that our Buddha fellows have found in the supply chains themselves. So that is second. Third, even today, I find a number of entrepreneurs, including those in the Buddha Fellowship, whose parents have come from the villages.
Okay.
They want to go back and do something. Madhu is from IIM Ahmedabad. He again from a farming family. So I think there is some, and there are others who are motivated to do something, say in the climate change or a biodiversity. So there are others. So I think this generation is more aware of the challenges the society is facing, and then we were aware, but we didn't want to take the risk.
Amazing.
So there, I think is my
That is
motivation.
such an amazing answer, because obviously it gives me a lot of confidence when you say this, that our Our country is in safe hands with all these young people. My next question to you is that what does success mean to you?
Actually, as I said, I don't worry so much about money.
Agree?
More and more people I can benefit. That is my definition of success.
Okay. And I have time for one last question. And that is that, you are a role model to millions of people, and the people you are touching. But if there were lots of children who were following your life choices closely, what is the one thing you would change in yourself?
I could be less arrogant, could be more humble and accepting
Okay.
my mistakes. A lot of people tell me that in Buddha fellowship particularly, you are too old, you should not tell me what to do.
Okay. Okay. And one more question I can ask you, and this is good relating to the pandemic. How are you changing your life in the new world order?
In one sense, it is very difficult because I am, older in the sense there's a path dependency. You want to believe in what you are. If you say something new, etc. But I think in one way I have responded very quickly is that I brought 65 organizations together, and collaboration. If you talk about NGOs collaborating, they don't collaborate. They don't talk to each other. In some ways, I think crisis has given us an opportunity to work together.
Okay.
So that way, I think it's an opportunity is how we have to look at it. And you look at the country as a whole, 5 crore migrants. So we have to come up with new ideas. We can't just rest on old things. So that is what we are doing. The collaboration is giving us an opportunity to work together in this civil society.
Wonderful. Ved, thank you so much. It's been such an honor and such a privilege speaking to you. I wish you lots of success.
Thank you, Ashutosh. And it's such a pleasure. It's embarrassing to talk about oneself. It's one-sided in that sense. And I hope we'll get to talk about you at some point.
Certainly, someday. Thank you again. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.